Hello everybody, this is Alex, also known as Solanus Dracone, and welcome to my Pern recap series. I'm starting in this particular tone of voice just to explain what I'll be doing, but my tone is going to definitely change once I actually get started. I'm going to be doing a sort of irreverent synopsis of the series, paraphrasing things, making things into jokes, basically just trying to yuck it up and have fun while still keeping to the basic thread of the story. This series will come out in my preferred reading order, so if you've followed my vids and have a yin to read the books, I'm going to recommend in the same order I'm going. All good? All good. So let's begin with literal book 1 of the series, Dragonflight. Dragonflight was made up of 2 short stories from Anne McCaffrey's earlier career, Weir Search and Dragon Rider, written in October and November of 1967 respectively. They were combined into the single book Dragonflight in July of 1968. The setting is at the very beginning of the 9th pass of the Red Star around the Ruckbat system. At this time, Pern had just come out of a long interval, 400 years with no thread, and what's more, 5 of the 6 Weirs completely vanished at the end of the last pass, leaving only Bend and Weir behind. Dragon Riders had fallen into deep disfavor across the whole of Pern, with the Lord seeing them as no longer necessary, and nobody believes thread is going to return. All but 3 of the major holds have cut off all of their tithing to Bend and Weir, and with the current management of the Weir, the Dragon Riders aren't about to go outside the Weir to do much, so things are getting pretty grim for dragonfolk. The Harper Hall is also in some disfavor among the lords, because most of their teaching songs are about dragons, and nobody wants to give a rat's ass about dragons, so that too is going on. The story opens up with our protagonist number 1, Lessa, the last surviving member of the Ruathan bloodline, after a warlord named Fax brutally murdered her entire family and anyone who had a hint of Ruathan blood. She only managed to escape slaughter at age 10 by running into the den of a watchware just as the murder was beginning. It's 10 years later now, and Lessa has been doing everything in her power during that time to make Ruatha as useless and unproductive as possible so that Fax could get no benefit out of his conquest. She can do this because she's psychic and therefore can influence everyone subtly. She's been dressed up in rags without showering or eating very well at all, and with such disgustingly matted hair combined with her mental buggery that nobody has ever gotten physically close enough to her to find out who she is, so she just lives like a drudge. Anyhow, Lessa wakes up to some kind of ominous premonition deep within her mind that something is about to happen and it's dangerous, but she goes about her day anyway. Quick character bio, she's kind of a bitch. Then we move on to someone else, our protagonist number 2, Falar. He's the son of Falan, a former Weir leader, and together with his literal brother from another mother, Fëanor, is one of the last dragon riders on Pern who believes that thread is actually going to return. Falar rides a bronze dragon named Nementh, and Fëanor rides a brown dragon named Canth. They're out on search because there is a queen dragon's egg on the hatching ground back at Bendon, and none of the Weir folk are suitable candidates to his mind. The previous queen, Nimorth, is dead because her rider Jorah died, because they were both fat and stupid, so this is literally the last queen dragon on all of Pern. Character bio, Falar is kind of an arsehole, and Fëanor is less of an arsehole. Falar and Fëanor arrive at Highreach's hold, one of the 7 holds owned by the aforementioned warlord Fax, to meet said Fax. Fax is the villain of the piece, and he's such an asshole that literally nobody likes him at all anywhere. But he's a mean ass and can fight, so nobody screws with him much. He's super tense about the Dragon Riders being there because screw Dragon Riders and everything to do with them, but he can't exactly do anything about it, so he puts up with it. Falar is desperate to find a worthy candidate for the Queen Egg because Jorah was such a vapid piece of crap that she nearly drove dragonkind to extinction with her slovenly lazy manner, and Falar really needs there to be someone with an ounce of sense sitting on the last golden dragon in all of existence. He's got super high hopes to find someone at Ruatha because Ruathans have always made the best Weir ladies, but everyone else is pretty sure that there's no one left alive. Falar and Fëanor go and have a chat with a man named Lytol, a former dragon rider whose brown dragon Lorth died way back in the day to a bad accidental burning, which left the man both mentally and physically scarred for life. The book calls Lorth a green dragon, but this is back when Anne didn't have her canon sorted, so we'll let that slide. Lytol is understandably a bit of a spaz, but he kept himself going by returning to his old life, which was as a weaver, and at the end of the day, for someone who had half of their soul ripped out, that's pretty darn good. Lytol's spazzing is especially bad around other dragon riders because it reminds him of his old life and that's painful, but he does give the dragon riders some decent info, mainly that there's nobody around here worthy of sitting on a queen dragon, and Fax is kinda scary, so watch the heck out. Next part, 4 days later, Falar and Fax and them are finally coming to Ruatha Hold, and as soon as she finds out, Lessa springs into action. Her plan is to make Fax so angry with the way that the place is run, that he'll renounce his claim on the hold or try to fight a dragon rider or something that would probably result in either his death or his buggering off. She screws up the dinner, she screws up the bedrooms, and generally screws everything up to ensure maximum rage on the part of her mortal enemy. Oh yeah, one of the people that came along for the ride is Fax's Lady Gemma, who is extremely pregnant and disastrously old to be pregnant, and it's basically assumed that Fax is trying to kill her through childbirth because he's never managed to have a son yet. That's going to be on the test. So everybody makes it to Ruatha and dinner is served and it sucks and Fax is hella angry and eventually he does yell out that if Ruatha Hold can't provide for itself or the visit of its rightful overlord, he will renounce it. Boom! Phase 1 of Lessa's plan complete. As the dinner goes on and Fax gets madder, Falar suddenly blurts out, "Looks like Ruatha can't support itself or its lord, you need to renounce it," while obviously under the effects of Lessa's mind buggery. Fax is about to pull out his knife and go to town when suddenly Gemma goes into labor. This distracts Fax from instant kill mode, and he says, "Yeah, okay, I'll give up Ruatha, but if the baby is a boy and survives." Ooh, Lessa's plan gone awry slightly. Lessa somehow manages to be on the team of ladies helping Gemma give birth, and Gemma dies during the process. Thinking that this means the child is dead too, she goes back to the dining hall and breaks her cover for a moment to give a big fat lie and say that the baby was born and it is male. Fax loses his temper, backhands Lessa across the room, and Falar breaks in to intervene. And now it's on Fax's head, just about enough, and it's stabby time. Falar fights Fax and wins, killing the bastard, but gets wounded in the process. He did notice when Lessa dropped her cover, however, and immediately goes and snags her to talk her into becoming Weirwoman instead of taking over Ruatha again. She declines and runs off, and as Falar follows after her, Fëanor tells him that the baby was born and that it is a boy, and it is going to be named Jackson. This will be on the test! Falar snags Lessa again and tells her what's up with the baby, and this time manages to talk her into it. Just as they're about to piss off, the Watchwear attacks Falar, thinking that he's a threat to Lessa, and Lessa yells to stop. The Watchwear does stop in midair and breaks its neck to follow his master's command and dies, and that's sad because Lessa's only friend for 10 years. The dragons give him a dragon death salute, and then everybody buggers off back to Ben and Weir, with Falar saying that Lytol should be in charge of Ruatha for now, until Jackson can grow up and claim it. Back at Bendon, Falar drops Lessa off in his room, and she gets to have her first bath in 10 years, which is nice, and her first fresh clothes in 10 years, which is nice, and when Falar gets back, she gets to eat her first full meal in 10 years, which is nice. And then the hatching starts! They haul ass to the hatching ground, and Lessa goes out onto the sand, and all the dragons start hatching and pairing off with riders as they do, and then the queen egg hatches. The little queen straight up murders 2 girls before Lessa finally catches her and boom, impression. The new queen's name is Ramoth, and she is Lessa's dragon now, and Lessa is super happy, and is the Weir Lady of Bendon Weir now, which is the last Weir on Pern, so she's the Weir Lady of all Pern now, hooray! Deep breath. Exhale. Chapter 2. It's 3 years later, and Lessa is bored as hell. The current Weir leader, Rigol, is a pansy and doesn't let her fly, doesn't let dragon riders leave the Weir, and doesn't leave threat is going to come back. All she does is write stuff down and repeat it back out, and she's had quite enough of that, thank you very much. She's wondering why Falar has gone quiet this whole time, because he made it sound like together they were going to shake things up and start kicking arse and taking names, but they haven't done any of that. The holds are giving measly tithes, and it doesn't look like the Weir's going to make it through the winter at this rate. And so the head woman Minora, Fëanor's mother, this will be on the test, subtly suggests that the dragon riders should go do a little bit of robbing to make up the difference. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Lessa is suffering from a slight case of the stupids, however, and she chooses one of the less subtle and cautious of the dragon riders to conduct these raids, so that's not very good now, is it? Anyhow, some time passes, Hold gets robbed, yada yada yada, and then suddenly Ramoth rises to mate. Nementh is the winner, and Falar is the new Weir leader, and Lessa gets laid. Suddenly, the Lords of the Holds are marching on the Weir, and they're effing mad. There's been too much raiding, and they're already tired of the Dragon Riders, so it's time for a reckoning. Rigol begins to try to act like a pansy, but Falar hip-checks him because Falar is the Weir leader now, and that means it's his policy. So he sends some dragons out to kidnap the ladies of the Lord Holders back at their homes, and they get set up to deal with this crisis. The Lord Holders arrive, including Lord Larad of Telgar and Lord Meron of Nabal. Larad's okay, but Meron's a schmuck. These will be on the test! Falar comes down with all of the dragons, talks some smack, reminds them that the Red Star is coming and so is Thread, and just as icing on the cake, shows them that he's got all their women on Dragonback. Hi there! Also, Lessa flies overhead with Ramoth because she can, and this all provides just enough inspiration and intimidation to get the Lord Holders to back off and start tithing again properly. Chicken dinner for Falar! Back home, maybe a week or so later, tithes have started to roll in, and the Dragon Riders of Bendon Weir have seen the Red Star bracketed in the eye rock at dawn on winter solstice, which is the ages-old signal that threat is about to begin falling. Falar decides it's time to teach Lessa to go between, A, because she should know how, and B, because if he doesn't teach her, she'll try it again on her own, and her and Ramoth could die, and there goes Dragonkind. Lessa performs well enough, but then, being the rebellious bitch she is, decides to try taking a jump between to Ruatha to see how it's doing. She had heard that it was prospering under Lytol, and so she imagines the productive and beautiful Ruatha of her youth and jumps there. However, when she arrives, it's not quite the Ruatha of present day. She actually jumped back in time about 13 years, and to her horror, she watches the beginning of Fax's invasion, and then her 10-year-old self running out into the Watchwear's den, and so now we know how she got into that warning back then. Shaken but still resolute, Lessa jumps to the next Ruatha she remembers, which was the Ruatha that was shit 3 years ago, and now she sees her 20-year-old self coming out of the Watchwear's den and staring off to the east. That's the source of the second premonition. Badly shaken now, she returns to Bendenweir of present day to a very angry Falar and explains what she's done, which makes Falar less angry, and he decides to try time jumping as well to witness his own traumatic event, which was when Regal's dragon Hath first mated with Nemorth, making the Pansy the Weir leader. And then he comes back slightly shaken as well, but then he realizes it's true, dragons can go between time as well as place, and that gives him something to think about. Part 3. So it's some time after that, and Falar is pulling his hair out over another impending crisis. Threat is about to start falling, and he's damn sure Pern doesn't have enough dragons to deal with it. If Nemorth and Jorah hadn't been such a useless pair, there would have been many more frequent matings with larger clutches of eggs in the years leading up to the next pass, and they'd have more dragons, so there's seemingly no end to the amount of Jorah's screw-ups even after death. While Lessa and Falar are chatting over it, Ramoth begins to lay her eggs. 41 eggs including a queen, bravo! In the coming weeks, Falar starts stepping on all sorts of tradition and begins to call searches from the holds and crafts, as well as allowing the new candidates to get to see the eggs first and touch them and get used to them, because it's normally sheer terror that causes all those deaths on the hatching ground. He also made it a thing now that all hatchings were to be spectated on by lord holders and craftmasters in an effort to try to bridge the gap of isolation between dragon riders and normal folk. Hatching done, a much happier Weir, and suddenly threat is beginning to fall. Threat had actually been falling since about winter solstice already, but it had been in the high northern areas where it just froze in a harmless black dust and nobody took notice. This is a live threadfall, however, and by the time they realize what's happening and where, it's already been going on for hours. Using the new time jump trick, Falar and the others jump between time to Nerat 2 hours ago, where live thread would be a really big problem in the lush jungles that Nerat is known for. It's a successful fight, but it's not without its casualties, including Fëanor getting a thread scar on his face, and Falar really begins to worry that they won't have nearly enough dragons to protect the planet. Something clearly has to be done. Lessa and Falar come up with a plan to send all the new hatched dragons to the long-abandoned southern continent of 10 years ago, to give them a chance to grow up into fighting dragons and maybe have the new queen dragon Prydeth lay some fresh eggs while they're at it. Prydeth was impressed by an uberslag named Kylera, who is such a slut that nobody wants to deal with her, but that won't be on the test until the next book. They chose the southern continent because they didn't want to create any time paradoxes by sending the dragons to any of the other existing weirs, and just at that moment, a very tanned Fëanor who doesn't have a scar on his face anymore runs in saying, "Oh my god, you guys! It's miserable down there, we can't take it anymore, we gotta come back forward because everybody's living like zombies because being in 2 times at once is super draining on the mind," and then runs the hell back out. Lessa's all, "But we didn't even send him yet," and Falar is all, "Well, apparently we did, so it looks like we're going to have to anyway." But not before there's a meeting with the Lord Holders, because if anyone doubted that thread was ever going to fall again, they're not doubting it now. All the Lord Holders and Craftmasters pile into Bendenweir for a meeting, while Lessa and Fëanor from present day, who isn't as tan and still has his thread scar and doesn't know what just happened, go check out the southern continent. In the meeting, we're introduced to 2 new important characters, Master Harper Robinton, who is awesome, and Master Smith Fandarel, who is also awesome. Robinton verbally bitch-slaps everyone in the room for being such arseholes to the dragon riders, and gets to enjoy some smug because his own Harpers had been having an equally rough time of it up until now. Fandarel finds out about the previous existence of flamethrowers from the Master Weaver, who talks about a tapestry that used to belong to Ruatha, where it shows some people on the ground using them, and he decides he's going to make some. That tapestry will be on the test. So, with the lords all given their instructions on what to do, Falar heads back to his room and finds future past tanned and healed Fëanor there all smug and happy because Southern Weir turns out to be a great place with huge gigantic lush jungle land abundant in fruit and natural resources and such, so apparently this Fëanor is from right after they all went back in time, but before he came back the last time, which is confusing as all hell, but just roll with it. Future past Fëanor says that Prydeth laid 32 eggs, so there'll be that many more dragons, even though there wasn't a queen egg. Good news, but still it's not going to be enough. Oh well, back to the past, goodbye. After that, Robinton comes to talk with Falar about the whole situation, and it's all, "By the way, there's this song we've been holding on to for centuries that nobody can make any sense of, but it has to do with the other 5 weirs, so maybe you'll want to hear it," and then sings it. The song doesn't make any sense, but it does contain the words "gone away, gone ahead," so if you can't figure out what happened with that, don't worry, nobody else had yet. Lessa and Fëanor come back from their scouting trip to the southern continent, and Falar talks about the question song with Lessa, and Lessa puts 2 and 2 together and says someone must have gone back in time and brought the others forward. Wow! That'd solve everything! But Falar knows what a pain in the ass Lessa is and forbids her, as if that's ever done any good. Anyhow, that tapestry has been found, and it indeed shows in great amazing detail what the flamethrowers look like. Fandarel shows up and studies it like a crazy person for hours, and then when he's done, Lessa wants to bring the tapestry back to Ruatha where it rightfully belongs, but we know what she's up to, don't we? Lessa does bring the tapestry back to Ruatha and studies it and realizes that the Ruatha pictured on it looks different from the Ruatha of now because it doesn't have some of the door parts on it yet. Using that as a reference point, she jumps on Ramoth and jumps back in time 400 years to Ruatha back then and promptly passes out because while a normal jump between takes like 8 seconds, this took like much longer and she ran out of oxygen on the trip. But she lived! After like weeks or something of being passed out with a fever, Lessa wakes up and holy hell it worked, and she meets the leaders of Fort Weir, Mardra, and Tehran, who is called Pt1 here because Anne hadn't sorted out her canon yet. She talks them and all the other Weirs except Bendon into going because they're all bored of no thread and the Lord Holder's beginning to ignore them, and they decide to go and make much more sensible 25-year hops on the way back, using the position of the red star in the sky as their reference point. Their last stop before the final run is at Rowatha of 13 years ago, which was when Fax was murdering everyone, which freaks Lessa out because she's now in the same time 3 times, and they make their final jump. With Lessa finally back, Falara is furious as hell at first, but then realizes she's just solved all the problems, is in fact a big damn hero, and Lessa finally has figured out not to be such a rebellious little bitch anymore, so she's less of a bitch than she used to be, but still a bitch with her priorities straight, so it's fine. And all the 6 Weirs of Pern reunite and fly against Thread, and they brought flamethrowers forward with them, so Fandorel has something to base making new ones off of, and the day is saved, and hooray, the end! And okay, so that's episode 1. Thank you and goodbye.